is the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we will make sure that the United States regrets the aggression against the Iranian people and the slaughter of children and the slaughter of innocent civilians and the murder of. The war was supposed to bring Iran down like a house of cards. That failed, this failed, and now the United States will have to pay the price for survival. For the United States, this is a war of choice, a choice that has been imposed upon the American people by the Epstein class. We will expel the United States from our homeland, and we'll make sure that the United States never again thinks about aggression against our country. It was a bridge too far. Iran will show the Americans that they're messing with the wrong country. What the United States did was a crime against humanity. What it is doing is a crime against humanity. We have no expectations from the West, nor the Western media. Western elites for us are a bunch of worthless barbarians.
So an Iranian professor just went on Western media and absolutely demolished every single talking point they had about the conflict with Iran. Like, I'm talking scorched earth. The host kept trying to push the standard Western narrative. You know, the one where Iran's the aggressor and the US is just defending freedom or whatever. And this guy systematically tore it apart piece by piece. And here's what makes this so wild. He's not just calling out the military strategy. He's going after the moral justification, the propaganda, the hypocrisy, all of it. And you can literally watch the host struggle in real time because none of their usual talking points land. This is what happens when someone who actually understands the region and isn't reading off a State Department script gets on air. The Western media playbook just completely falls apart. Watch how this unfolds. Let's get into it.
Could you explain to me, how do you think the Iranian military strategy is now playing out?
It's working quite well. Iran is hammering the Israeli regime in retaliation for its atrocities and its unprovoked war. And it's hammering US positions across the Persian Gulf region for its atrocities and the unprovoked war. And there's been no let-up in Iranian responses. And that is because Iranian missile and drone bases are all deep underground and inaccessible to the United States and the Israeli regime. And that's why they take revenge on ordinary Iranians. They've been bombing Tehran and other cities, destroying homes, destroying hospitals, destroying schools, slaughtering children. In one instance, they murdered 165 girls, young girls, at an elementary school. They've been buried today. So since they cannot defeat the Iranian military, they take their revenge on ordinary Iranians.
It's clearly causing chaos in the Gulf states, particularly with the attacks on energy facilities. Is that part of the Iranian strategy to wage economic war as well?
No, Iran has not taken any responsibility for the strikes on the energy facilities, for example, in Saudi Arabia. That could be something carried out by the Israeli regime. But the Iranians have told tankers that they are not allowed to leave the Strait of Hormuz. And when these Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf, when they give the United States military bases to use against Iran, then there are consequences. They cannot have their cake and eat it too. They cannot participate in aggression against Iran alongside this Epstein coalition and then sit back and say we're neutral.
Right, but you're not denying the other attacks, are you, in other Gulf countries which do affect energy supplies, and the oil price has gone up significantly. So I mean, that does seem to be part of the Iranian military strategy, isn't it? I mean, to try and bring them into the war and regionalize it.
No, Iran has been targeting US assets in the Persian Gulf, and those assets could be anything that's linked to the United States. The United States is bombing hospitals. The United States is bombing schools. The United States is bombing Iranian national radio and television alongside the Israeli regime. So US assets in the Persian Gulf, they too will be attacked. But assets that belong to the states in the Persian Gulf region, they have not been touched by the Iranians. However, if they host US forces, because many of the soldiers have left their bases and been taken to hotels, the Iranians will target them. So at the end of the day, if they want this problem to end, they have to expel soldiers of the Epstein regime.
Now, we understand that the Assembly of Experts is trying to appoint a new supreme leader. Could a new leader, do you think, negotiate with Trump and agree to his terms?
No. Iran is not interested in negotiating with Trump or the US regime. Iran is going to punish the United States, and we are in the process of doing it. This regime in Washington has tried to cross a bridge that's a bridge too far, and they're messing with the wrong country. We're not Venezuela, we're not Iraq, we're not Libya, we're not Afghanistan, and we're not Syria. This is the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we will make sure that the United States regrets the aggression against the Iranian people and the slaughter of children and the slaughter of innocent civilians and the murder of the leader. These are crimes against humanity, and the United States and its allies have imposed the law of the jungle upon the world, and they will come to regret it.
But Iran is not a military superpower either, and we're seeing the vast majority of drones and missiles being shot down by air defenses. I mean, you know, surely Iran cannot win a military war and therefore has to go for some other kind of strategy in coming to a settlement.
Iran will defeat the United States. Time will tell. And our drones that are being fired are very old drones. Our missiles that are being fired are very old missiles. They're very inexpensive. And Americans are using up very expensive air defense systems. The Iranians know exactly what they're doing. We haven't even begun using our latest technology, and most of Iran's underground bases have not even been used yet. They have not even been opened up for operation. The Iranians have been planning for this day ever since the invasion of Iraq. They knew that at some point, the Epstein regime will...
Okay, so look at what he just did there. He completely reframed the entire conversation. The host is trying to paint Iran as the aggressor. You know, the classic playbook. And Marandi just flips it. He says, yeah, we're hitting back because you're bombing our hospitals and schools and murdering children. And then he drops that detail about 165 girls killed at an elementary school. Like, dude, where's that story in Western media? You think that's leading CNN? Of course not, because it completely destroys the narrative they've been selling. And notice how the host immediately pivots to, well, what about the economic warfare? What about the energy facilities? Trying to make Iran sound like the problem. And Marandi doesn't even flinch. He says Iran hasn't claimed responsibility for those strikes, points out it could literally be false flag stuff, and then explains that if Gulf states are hosting US military bases used to attack Iran, there's consequences. Like, you can't let your country be used as a launch pad for aggression and then claim neutrality. That's not how this works. Here's the thing about Western media coverage of this entire situation, and I know you guys already see this. They frame every Iranian response as aggression, while completely ignoring what provoked it. The US has been strangling Iran with sanctions for decades, assassinating their leaders, supporting regime change operations, and now bombing civilian targets. But when Iran fires back, suddenly that's the story. That's the threat to regional stability. It's so transparent, man. It would almost be funny if real people weren't getting killed. And Marandi knows exactly what he's doing. He keeps bringing it back to civilian casualties, to hospitals, to schools, to children, because that's what actually matters. That's the crime. The rest is just propaganda to justify it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you believe the Western media narrative on this, or are you starting to see the holes?
Iranians. And therefore, they've been preparing themselves for many years. We are fighting for our homeland and our sovereignty and our independence. And our crime is that we oppose the genocide that the British regime and the American regime and Western regimes have been supporting. And we are on the right side of history, and the United States is the aggressor, and we will punish the aggressor and make it regret its crimes against humanity.
What percentage of Iran's missile stocks remain?
The vast majority.
Because after last year's war, it was estimated that Iran had used up around 40% of its missiles. Are you saying that was replenished in the last few months?
Those numbers were always fake. Those numbers are provided by the Israeli regime to the media in order to convince foolish Americans that war against Iran is simple. This war was supposed to end in a day or two. The 12-day war was supposed to bring Iran down like a house of cards. That failed, this failed, and now the United States will have to pay the price. And if the United States escalates, that will mean that the most sensitive region in the world, the Persian Gulf, where a quarter of the world's energy comes from, everything could be destroyed. And if that happens, it doesn't even matter if the Strait of Hormuz is open or closed, because there will be no oil or gas, and there will be no tankers. For Iran, this is a fight for survival. For the United States, this is a war of choice, a choice that has been imposed upon the American people by the Epstein class. We will expel the United States from our homeland, and we'll make sure that the United States never again thinks about aggression against our country. And we will not allow the Israeli regime to behave with impunity and to continue genocide against the Palestinian people.
Isn't the truth, though, that a lot of Iranian people want to see this government toppled? We saw tens of thousands taking to the streets just weeks ago, and many thousands of people were killed by the security forces. So public opinion is divided on this.
Don't believe your propaganda. That's silly.
Well,
I've already had an interview. I've already spoken with your colleague. Though the people who were killed, 3,117 people were killed, hundreds were police officers and people who were patrolling the streets as volunteers, and hundreds of others were ordinary people that were murdered by these militants and these terrorists who were using weapons to kill. In your country, if they kill a single police officer, there will be outrage. Here, they killed hundreds, including the volunteers. So this was no peaceful protest. And you know quite well, because I know you follow these things. In Iran, on February the 12th, we had millions of people on the streets of Tehran and tens of millions across the country rallying against the rioters. And on February the 11th, on the 47th anniversary of the revolution, we had millions of people again on the streets of Tehran and tens of millions across the country. And as we're speaking across the country, as we're speaking now, you have millions of people in the streets of Tehran under bombardment, and in other cities under bombardment, commemorating the martyr Ayatollah Khamenei. So you can pretend all you want that Iranians want their country to be bombed. But at the end of the day, your policymakers, by believing their own propaganda, are going to hit their head once again against a brick wall. But this time, the price will be very high, and I think it will bring about a change in global politics.
I'm not denying that huge numbers of people have come out in support of the government, but from your own account of the way people have been killed and were fighting in the streets effectively, you know, the country is clearly divided to some degree, and there are many people who do not support the government. And but I wonder, you know, often in wartime, public opinion changes, and the acts of an outside aggressor can change public opinion. And I just wonder whether you think that might happen in Iran.
No, the strong majority of Iranians, even according to polls taken by...
And here it is. Here's the go-to move when Western media can't win the policy argument. They pivot to, but what about internal division? What about the protests? The people don't support you. Like clockwork, every single time. You see it with Venezuela, you see it with Cuba, you see it with Syria. Anytime a country resists US hegemony, the media immediately starts talking about how the people want regime change. And it's such obvious propaganda. Look at how Marandi handles this. He doesn't deny that protests happened. He explains that over 3,000 people died, but hundreds of those were police officers and volunteers killed by armed militants. Not exactly a peaceful protest. And then he points out something the host really doesn't want to acknowledge. Millions of Iranians came out in support of the government. Millions. In Tehran alone. Tens of millions across the country. But you didn't see that footage plastered all over CNN, did you? You didn't see those massive rallies for the revolution's anniversary treated as newsworthy, because it destroys the narrative. The Western media wants you to believe that Iranians are just waiting for the US to save them from their government, that they want regime change, that they're begging for intervention. And some Iranians do oppose the government. Every country has internal divisions. But the idea that the majority want their country bombed by the United States, that they're cheering for foreign aggression, that's delusional. That's the same propaganda that got us into Iraq. They'll greet us as liberators. How'd that work out? And Marandi makes a devastating point here. The divisions in your country and the United States are far greater than the divisions in Iran. Like, he's not wrong. Look at the US right now. Look at the UK. Completely fractured societies where people can't even agree on basic reality. But they're lecturing Iran about unity and legitimacy? The audacity is unbelievable. And then he brings up the German chancellor calling for regime change in Iran, while Germany literally gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons that killed thousands of Iranians. Like, you want to talk about credibility? You want to talk about moral authority? Germany doesn't have it. The US doesn't have it. The UK doesn't have it. Not after Iraq. Not after Libya. Not after decades of propping up dictators and selling weapons to whoever writes the check. Follow the pattern here. Every time the West wants to justify intervention, whether it's sanctions, bombing campaigns, or full invasion, they claim it's about human rights, or democracy, or saving the people from their evil government. But it's never about that. It's about control. It's about resources. It's about maintaining dominance. Iran's crime isn't human rights violations. Iran's crime is refusing to let Western corporations loot their oil and gas. That's it. That's the whole game. Drop a comment. Do you think the Iranian people actually want US intervention? Or is that just another excuse for regime change?
For example, in the past, I don't know if they still carry out polls, but it shows that the strong majority of Iranians support the Constitution. And now that the United States is murdering Iranians, many of those youngsters who are on the streets, who believe the fake Western narratives about human rights and dignity and freedom, are watching children being slaughtered. And Western media is ignoring it. And Western governments are not even apologizing for it. And the British and the German regime, the German chancellor says there must be regime change in Iran. The German chancellor must first apologize to the people of Iran for giving Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to use against us that killed so many thousands of people. The German regime has no credibility and is in no position to talk about Iran. And the divisions that exist right now in your country and the United States are far greater than the divisions that exist in Iran. The people of Iran are united, and we will see that the United States will fail, and the United States will pay a heavy price. And ultimately, people will see that the emperor has no clothes. The United States bullies country after country. It strangles Cuba. It takes the people of Venezuela hostage. It imposes al-Qaeda rule on the people of Syria. Iran was a bridge too far. Iran will show the Americans that they're messing with the wrong country.
What about the competence, though, of your security apparatus? I mean, after the killing of the Ayatollah with so many senior figures, we have now seen that, again, the clerics have met in the Assembly of Experts building in Qom, and that has also been bombed. I mean, does it not strike you as very odd that senior Iranian figures are still meeting in known places where they can be targeted?
No, no one was in that building. Why do you believe this nonsense? And senior military figures, except for in the office of the leader, a number of people who were killed, no one else was killed. And Ayatollah Khamenei said that I'm going to remain in my house because many people who are struggling cannot leave their homes. And I will stay here till the end because of these people. And he stayed and he was martyred. That's not something that your leader would ever do. But in any case, we are seeing the Iranian armed forces effectively pushing back against this sinister superpower of our time and against this genocidal Zionist regime that continues to slaughter people in Gaza, in Palestine, and in Lebanon. Simultaneously, they're waging a war, and Iran is pushing them back. At the same time, we see that the government, despite the maximum pressure sanctions, we see that people have food, that there are no queues. So that is pretty significant, I must say. And your government, which has no sanctions and has no war, the regime in London is not proving to be very efficient nor very popular.
Just finally, I mean, the United States president and the Israeli prime minister killed the Iranian supreme leader. Will it now be the aim of the Iranian military and all its networks around the world to take their revenge on those individuals?
What the United States did was a crime against humanity. What it is doing is a crime against humanity. We have no expectations from the West, nor the Western media. Western elites for us are a bunch of worthless barbarians. Iranians will protect themselves. I do not know what Iran will do or its allies will do across the world, but the entire world is sick and tired of the way in which the United States and its proxies in Europe behave. It's a rogue regime. As we speak, they are strangling the people of Cuba. They're preventing food from getting in. I don't see any outrage in the Western media. Why? Because the Western media is just as worthless as Western elites.
We'll leave it there. Mohammad Marandi, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about what we just watched. Because this wasn't just an interview. This was a complete dismantling of the Western narrative on live television. The host came in with every standard talking point: Iranian aggression, economic warfare, internal division, incompetent security, and Marandi systematically destroyed every single one. And here's what makes this so important. This guy is not playing defense. He's not trying to explain himself or beg for understanding or appeal to Western sensibilities. He's going on offense. He's calling the US a rogue regime. He's calling Western leaders barbarians. He's saying Iran will punish the United States and make it regret its crimes against humanity. Like, when's the last time you heard someone talk to Western media like that and not get immediately shut down or framed as crazy? But he's not crazy. He's just not following the script. The script says you're supposed to be apologetic, defensive, worried about how you're perceived. You're supposed to care about Western approval. And Marandi doesn't. He flips the whole thing. He says, we don't have expectations from the West. Western elites are worthless barbarians. And you know what? After Iraq, after Libya, after Afghanistan, after decades of coups and sanctions and bombing campaigns and dead children, he's not wrong. Let's talk about the actual arguments he made, because they're devastating. The US doesn't know what to do when the bluff gets called, except escalate, which is exactly what Marandi's warning about. If this escalates, if the Persian Gulf gets destabilized, if a quarter of the world's energy supply gets disrupted, that affects everyone. Oil prices, gas prices, global economy, everything. And it won't be because Iran wanted war. It'll be because the United States couldn't tolerate a country saying no. So yeah, Marandi absolutely won this. Not because he had better sound bites or because he was more polite. He won because he had the truth on his side, and he wasn't afraid to say it. Western media isn't used to that. They're used to people who need something from the West, who want approval, who can be pressured and shamed and manipulated. Marandi doesn't need anything from them, and that's what makes him dangerous to the narrative. All right, if you found this breakdown valuable, smash that like button, share this with someone who still believes everything they see on CNN, and subscribe to MB, because this is what we do here. We call out the propaganda, we follow the money, and we don't carry water for either side of the corporate duopoly. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know, do you think Iran can actually push back against US aggression? Or is this just posturing? Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.